And if I'm breaking up at all, let me know. I'm actually
You're sounding fine right now.
I'm using I'm using a hotspot for my Wi-Fi because MediaCom sucks ass and my internet's been down all week.
Yeah, well, MediaCom has always done that.
Yeah.
See, I sound like I'm underwater. Okay. Let's try something here.
I don't know if it's on my end or yours, but I'm having a hard time seeing and hearing you. You're breaking up a lot on my end.
It's yours. Your signal's coming in and out. Yeah. I think I lost you.
Yeah, I'm not catching any of that.
Yeah, it's your signal. Because your video stream is almost frozen. Test. Come on, audio. Figure your shit out.
Baby shark do 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 shark do 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 do.
Hey, Craig, shut up.
What's wrong?
I'm trying to test my audio. That's not helping. See, I'm still muffled. Hold on, let me undo my mic. Let's try this now. Test.
Oh.
And now I gotta wait 7 seconds for YouTube to catch up. That sounds a little better. Am I still breaking?
Yeah, you're still breaking up on my end.
Craig,
I don't know. I guess I don't know if that's.
I can hear you fine. I think this is another classic case of MediaCom sucking.
Yeah.
Well, I was telling Scott I'm using a hotspot right now because my internet's actually down. So I've got the hotspot right next to my computer, and the cell signal is coming in. I actually checked this out from the library.
Oh, nice.
Test.
So
Test.
I'm wondering if I'm better off. I wonder if I could borrow my wife's computer, if that might help, if I have a faster computer to start with.
Yeah, because your audio
is it breaking up on your end? Because you sound fine on my end.
Yeah, it's hearing you guys. Whenever you guys talk, it starts to break up, and then it cuts in and out.
I gotcha. Well, that's not good.
Yeah. Give me a second.
Okay.
Here, let me see something. I'll be right back.
I'm still trying to test out my audio anyway, because my audio is sounding like shit. Oh, that did it. That did it.
That's the ticket.
I found the solution. Hangouts had me set for default mic, and when I turn on the actual mic I'm using, it's like, hey, I have sound now.
Tomorrow I'm going to use this new app that I downloaded from my phone. See if that works.
One of the ones those guys told you to download?
Yeah, I went ahead and downloaded both of them. The two that are primarily what they have. Boss Jock was $9.99, so I went ahead and bought that. I'm gonna try that one first. The Ferret one is $20, so I don't want to buy that one. Well, the free version of it. The free version only allows you to record for an hour, so I don't want to get cut off, you know?
Yeah.
All right. I'll be with you in 1 second.
That's fine, Lou. Figure it out. And he's gone. All right. It means I can get my Mountain Dew. I forgot.
Are we live now?
Hello.
Are we live now?
Yeah, just because I was testing the audio, but it's private.
Oh, okay.
It's just easier to listen to the audio on the YouTube feed.
I forgot my earbuds at work, so I'm using my wireless ones.
Sounds fine to me. You're not getting any feedback, so that's good.
That's good. Dr. Dre is good for something.
Okay. Can you hear me?
You're sounding fine. How are we doing?
Okay.
Hello.
Are we doing okay?
Can you hear us?
Okay.
Can you hear us?
Here.
I can hear you. That's much better.
Good. I'm finishing my synopsis. Give me 1 minute here.
Okay. I'm gonna go grab the. Are my mic levels okay? I'm on a new computer now.
Hey, you sound fine.
You're good.
I'll
Okay.
turn on the
I'll be right
YouTube
back. I gotta grab the charger.
Go ahead.
So Anna and I turned on your live stream yesterday and
Yeah.
commented that you've done however many live streams. Your basement has been seen by thousands of people, and you still can't just like pick up the papers that are right over your left shoulder.
Those are Amber's papers.
Yeah, but I feel like you could tidy up a little bit.
Screw it. Screw it.
Okay.
Don't you put all these out live now, like not private, or?
I haven't been doing these. For one, this doesn't even drop until the 22nd.
Oh, okay.
So if I know it's like going to drop the next morning, I'm just doing them live. But this one's so far off, I didn't want to screw with things.
Okay. I just watched Fury today for the special tomorrow, and that movie's nuts.
I've heard mixed reviews on it. I've never seen it.
It's like incredibly, like, what's weird is I read so many reviews that said it has no heart, but it's like incredibly emotional to me. Like, I was tense.
It's got crazy guy with a bag on his head.
Shia LaBeouf.
Yes.
Yeah, he's actually pretty good in it.
Or not, for a 90-minute movie, it's rather hard to put the synopsis together for this thing. Okay. Okay, Jeremy, I'm really hoping when you edit this thing that you cut out the first 15 or 10 minutes of us doing absolutely nothing. If not, this is going to be artistic. I'm going to check levels one more time before we get rolling, so give me 1 second. I think I fixed my problem, but I want to listen to it on the stream to make sure I actually did fix it. Are you slapping yourself? Okay, my problem's good. Craig, and then Lou, speak, please.
Hello, and welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews.
Cute. Lou, speak.
Hello, this is Lou for the Front Row Movie Reviews podcast, the podcast for people who actually like movies.
Hey, he got it down.
I'm waiting for the 7-second delay. Lou, believe it or not, if you can turn down your mic about that 5%, if not, no big deal.
No, I can. But
aside from that, we're good to go. You're just a little high.
Maybe just not screaming into the microphone.
Right.
That's a good possibility too. Okay.
All right. How about that? Is that better?
Sure.
Yeah.
We'll go with it.
Okay.
All right. What is somebody playing ping pong somewhere?
It's my feet.
We can hear it. Okie dokie. I haven't done one of these since July, as Craig likes to point out, so we'll see how this goes. All right, turn all this shit down. Okay, here we go. We'll go ahead and go in 3 and 2 and 1. Hello, everyone out there in podcast land. Welcome to the Front Row Movie Reviews, the podcast for people who actually like movies, and I don't have to say TV for once. Hey. I am Scott, and we are here for the quasi-grand return of flashbacks. I think the last thing we did was Transformers when Transformers 5 came out, so it's been a while. But we've been kind of busy talking about TV shows that are good and sometimes not good. But we're back, and we are here to talk about one of the best holiday movies of all time. And when I say holiday, I mean the true holiday that's going on right now, Thanksgiving. Because if you are listening to Christmas music right now, I'm looking at you, Brandon Davis, you are a sick individual and you need to be put out of your misery. And I see Craig is giving me the middle finger right now because Craig is one of those sick individuals. There is a holiday before Christmas, sir. It is Thanksgiving. It is quite important. Bite me. So we are obviously talking about the greatest Thanksgiving movie of all time, at least I believe so. There's not many Thanksgiving movies out there, but this is the best one. And that is
Charlie Brown.
Okay, Charlie Brown's a good one too. I'll give you that. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is what we're here to talk about today. As I mentioned, I'm Scott, and with me to talk about this is...
I'm Craig. Excited to be on a flashback for the first time. as we like to say on the Disney podcast, for the first time in forever.
Hi. Lou, this is where you talk.
Okay. Hi, this is Lou Hare, and I am excited to actually be getting to talk about a movie that's not a guilty pleasure. There's nothing guilty about this movie. It's amazing. I'm very excited to get into it with you tonight.
Yeah,
no, like how we both subtly plugged our own shows?
Well, we'll have that.
That's right. Brand integration.
When you have 5 million shows that you're doing, you have to plug them because there's far too many to not plug.
I will say, I'm not currently interviewing Academy Award winners, but I like you guys too.
Wow.
I interviewed a guy who directed a movie with William Shatner, so I win.
He directed a good Star Trek. They might want to give him a call real quick.
If you would listen to our podcast about Star Trek Discovery, the last episode wasn't half bad.
But from what I hear in the chats, there was nudity in it, and that's not Star Trek.
There were Klingon boobs.
Everything about that's not Star Trek. Anyway, not to get on too big of a tangent.
Now we've plugged my one show. Here we go. We'll go ahead and give you a little synopsis for the one person in the world who hasn't watched Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, which actually was Craig up until 2 days ago. So I'm looking forward to getting Craig's insight as somebody who just watched it for the first time. Because I don't know about you, Lou, but I've probably seen this one 6 million times.
I couldn't count how many times I've seen this movie.
I did pull out my old DVD to watch it this time, and I realized it was a DVD in standard def, which tells you how long I've had that DVD. I think it's time to upgrade to the Blu-ray. So I'll go ahead and give us a little bit of synopsis about Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, and then we will dive right into our first impressions. And we'll talk to Craig first about that because his first impression is pretty fresh. But Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a John Hughes film. A John Hughes film that doesn't include kids who are 15 to 25 years old. And it is starring Steve Martin and John Candy. Steve Martin is Neil Page. He is a marketing exec who just wants to get home to his suburban family in Chicago for the holidays, for Thanksgiving. When trying to make his 6 o'clock flight from New York, Neil runs into Del Griffith, the most annoying shower curtain ring salesman in history, and Kevin Bacon. Neil makes the flight after it's delayed, and in mid-flight, while sitting next to Del, they are diverted to Topeka, Kansas. There, Neil... it was Wichita, Kansas. No,
Wichita, yes.
Yes, Wichita, Kansas.
Yeah.
See, I already screwed up the synopsis. It's fine. There, Neil and Del become alarmingly close as they both share a hotel room for the night. The flights are still a no-go the next morning, so they take a train, which breaks down in Jefferson City, Missouri. They then take a bus to St. Louis and rent a car for the rest of the drive. And somewhere right around Springfield, their car catches fire. They make the last 3 hours of the journey via the back of a semi. When they make it to Chicago, Neil learns that Del is homeless and that he isn't as annoying as he originally thought. He invites Del to his home for Thanksgiving, and Del is only going to stay for a bit. Yep, sure is. So, Craig, let's get your first impressions of your first viewing of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles.
Sure. So for some reason, I've heard about this film like a ton, but it was one of those that I thought that I'd just get around to at some point. And having grown up maybe 3 years too late, I like John Candy, but outside of, say, like Cool Runnings, I don't have too much to go off of there. So it was kind of nice to see him in this film, a completely different film for him. It was also interesting to see Steve Martin play kind of the more serious of the two, because I'm so used to him also being the zany, over-the-top SNL Steve Martin that I'm used to. And then, this movie sneaks up on you because it's a goofy comedy. It's kind of short, but then right towards the end, and I mean kind of sprinkled throughout, it's got a little bit of heart in it too. And that's where, to me, I didn't know that this was written and directed by John Hughes until the end, when the credits started to roll, and that made complete sense to me once the credits started to roll. I really enjoyed this film pretty thoroughly. It's one that I'll definitely revisit over and over again. And it's kind of cool that it takes place all in the Midwest, of course, being a John Hughes film, and kind of that destination of Chicago makes a lot of sense. But really enjoyed the film and excited to get to watch it half a dozen billion times, whatever Scott just said.
I love the fact that you were born too late for this film, but you referenced 1970s Steve Martin on SNL. So it shows.
You know.
Yeah. No, but this it's interesting. The kind of John Candy is playing what we know as John Candy, but I really think this is probably the role that kind of made him that character. I mean, Dell is basically the same guy who helps out in Home Alone when you think about it, except for he plays an accordion. And Steve Martin, for me, I'm used to him playing the straight guy. I think because of his later films, even to this day, he usually plays the straight guy more than anything else. So this is kind of normal for me, but I can see where you're coming from on that, especially you think like King Tut. Lou, what do you got?
Well, I saw this movie in the theater, actually.
You were what, 6?
I saw 7.
Okay, I was close.
I was 7. No, it was 1987. So I was 8. I was a mature 8 at the time. My parents took me. This is one of the few. My parents have wildly different tastes in films. And this is one of the few movies that I remember the entire family going to see. My parents, my sister, and myself. So it's rare that the 4 of us all saw a movie together. And this was the one that we saw when I was 8 years old. To give that context, my wife and I just had a discussion last night over whether 7 years old was too early for my daughter to watch Home Alone. I tried to use this as a bargaining chip. Didn't work. But no, so I mean, it has that connection, but I remember everybody in my family laughing hysterically at this movie and just kind of revisiting it through the years. And you're right, Craig, what didn't strike me, obviously, as an 8-year-old, although I remember getting misty at the end of it when John Candy reveals that his wife is dead. But as I've gotten older, I've gotten to appreciate it more and more just because of the dimensions of the characters, aside from it just being hilarious. And to me, this is the quintessential John Candy performance out of all the great ones he's given. It's my favorite. And it's probably my favorite John Hughes movie. So I revisit this every Thanksgiving now. And I can't say enough good things about it, but I'll say a lot more as we go on.
I was mad at myself because I rented it on iTunes and I didn't just buy it. I should have, because I should have just saved my $3 or whatever. Because what's interesting, I've come to think about this more since the holidays are coming up. I think I'm more okay with buying movies that are holiday films because I will revisit them almost every year, as opposed to like a lot of other films. I watch them once and then they're kind of done, but that's kind of nice to add this to the repertoire of holiday films that I can watch every year. Liam was the first person to grab a Christmas movie in the household, and he put in Muppets Christmas Carol. So I've already watched that. But, things like Holiday Inn and White Christmas and Hocus Pocus for Halloween, like those movies that you revisit every single year, this is definitely one of those. I can see why people have fallen in love with it, and I can see why it might be your favorite John Hughes film. I don't know that anything touches Ferris Bueller for me, but I really do enjoy this film.
And the one reason why I would say you definitely should buy this film, and we'll talk about it when we talk about our favorite scenes, because it's going to be one of yours, if not, it's going to be mine, is there is literally 60 seconds of this film that you're not going to get on cable, but it is an amazing 60 seconds of film. And then we'll talk about more. But yeah, you definitely need to check this out on DVD or Blu-ray rather than, or stream it on YouTube or whatever, rather than check it out on cable. For me, I am not a Carter baby like Lou, so I was 4 or 5 when this came out. And so I caught this probably in the early 90s on cable. And It's one of those where it usually is played quite a bit. It was played a lot more also, back then when there wasn't as many movies to be viewed on cable. But it was I've probably saw it about 4 or 5 times and without seeing the whole thing, probably just bits and pieces as it's been on. And it probably wasn't until high school. So mid to late 90s that I finally picked this thing up and watched it all the way through in one sitting, realizing at that point that it was only 90 minutes long. I always assumed it was a longer film. But since then, it has been my go-to. As Craig mentioned, holiday films are easy to go back to. For me, Christmas, I can't have a Christmas without watching Die Hard. And probably not as
I found your Christmas present, by the way. Do you want me to tell you what it is?
What?
Do you know that there's a Die Hard Christmas book now? And it's like it's a cartoon, so it's got the illustrations of a cartoon, and it's the story of Die Hard, but it's tied into a Christmas theme. It's brand new.
Is there a line in there that goes ho ho ho? Now I have a shotgun or machine gun.
Well, I just looked at the preview on Amazon, and if you pull it up, like the third preview image is a dude getting shot and like the blood splatter behind him.
I'll be reading this to my children. Yes.
It's currently, I believe, on the top of the Amazon charts. I was thinking about getting it for you for Christmas, so maybe I still will, but it's just too good to not mention.
But yeah, no. So I mean, for Thanksgiving, there's not much Thanksgiving themed shows, and I think this one fits. Not only that it's got the holiday in the movie, but it truly is a kind of a message of Thanksgiving when you think about Del and Neil coming together and bringing Neil into the family. So let's go ahead and talk about some of the things we like about this film the most. Let's go ahead and talk about favorite scenes first, and then we'll do some other discussions after that. So, Lou, give me 1 or 2, not 20 like Jeremy, of your favorite scenes.
Well, okay, I'm not going to cheat and give 20 different scenes, but I'm going to cheat.
You're going to cheat anyway. Okay.
I'm going to cheat in the way that I'm going to give you a sequence. Because I think this film gets broken down into really segments, into sequences. And to me, the hotel sequence, from the minute they walk into the door till the tagline of "Those Aren't Pillows," is that whole thing is perfection. And I think if you want to encapsulate John Hughes into 10 minutes of screen time, that might be it, because it has sentiment, it has broad comedy, it has observational humor, it's got kind of everything all rolled into one, and it ends on that perfect tag. And because nestled in there is that scene of Steve Martin berating John Candy, and John Candy just on that close-up, just taking it all in. It's some of the best acting either one of them's ever done, but it also ends with the scene with a guy's hand in another guy's butt. So what's not to love about just that entire sequence?
See, you assume it was his butt crack. I figured it was his thighs. But if you want to go all the way in the gutter, more power to you.
So here's the deal. I didn't know. So I kept thinking, like, what the hell is he talking about? I thought it was his balls.
Those are some massive balls.
Those are huge balls.
See, I've never heard any stories of Steve Martin's testicle prowess, but
maybe.
There's so many things in that scene, Lou. I'll give it to you. It's kind of a couple scenes, but for one, when you watch this film too much, you notice things. Like, for example, at the head of the bed, there's a painting, and if you look to both sides of the painting, there are stains of handprints. Just 2 handprints, one on each side of the painting. So take that as you will. They're there the entire time. You have just randomly some guy breaking in and stealing their wallet, their money out of their wallets. And, you kind of assume that that's probably somebody who works for the hotel or what have you, but never talked about again, aside from the fact that they're out of money. I love how Del prepares himself for bed at night. I didn't know you had that many joints you could pop, and I'm pretty sure he breaks his neck at the very end. And as much as we're trying to figure out where his hand was at the end of the scene, what is he scratching after he's done clearing out his sinuses? Anyone got any idea on that one?
Oh, I assume he's just getting deep in the crevices down there. Like he is.
Thank you for that. And another thing I noticed is when he is cleaning his sinuses, he's doing it to the tune of shaving a haircut.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah.
But yeah, so everything in that scene, Steve Martin brushing his teeth and finding out that the water is full of Dell socks and underwear is just priceless.
Yeah, the whole thing is great. And go ahead, Greg.
Oh no, I was just saying. At first, I was a little like I was confused only because I thought that Neil had taken the shower first, and so I was like, is this just like dirty from just the hotel being dirty? But then it did take me a beat to realize that Dell had, flaunted his wares all over that hotel room first.
And if you look at all those wares, every single one of them, I swear to God, every single one of them, because I paused and looked after a while, has something to do with gastrointestinal issues. There is no mouthwash. There is no toothpaste. It is Tums, Mylanta, Pepto-Bismol. It is everything to clear that man's gut out. We'll go. I know you got a couple, Lou, but let's go to Craig first and see what scene he likes.
Well, it's the only scene I had seen before, but now seeing it in context, it makes it that much better, and that's the interstate scene.
Yes.
And again,
I-55.
much like Lou, yeah, I-55. Much like Lou said, I mean, it's kind of like the encapsulation of once they get into that rental car, all the way to they get out of the rental car as it's still smoldering. I don't know how they get in it without like melting. And then Steve Martin's like touching the steering wheel like it's still hot. Like if that would just stick to your hands. And
it
then
does.
Your hands would just be
later on. His fingers are stuck to the steering wheel. He has to pry them off.
I know, but he would have like third-degree burns at that point.
Yeah, of course. They'd also be dead.
Right.
I mean, they did turn into skeletons. But like just seeing that scene of you're going the wrong way, and the guy, and then John Candy when he just goes drinking, drinking, because I had seen that.
How would he know where we're going?
Yeah,
actually,
right. How would he know?
I think that scene was in what was that movie? What was that movie game that was like big like 10 years ago? It was like a trivia movie game. Seen It, yeah, it was in Seen It, and so that's why I had seen that scene so many times.
Because Seen It only has about 5 movie clips in the entire game. And
at the time, at its peak, Seen It was the bomb. But
I had Marvel Seen It. I know, I understand. Before there was Marvel.
Seriously, a wonderful, it was just cool to see it in context and see it like in action. And I really enjoyed just their interaction the whole time while they're in the car. Everywhere from Candy breaking the seat and just everything that happened in that was perfect.
I want to know how slow Candy was driving, because I've driven St. Louis to Chicago way too many times. Craig, I'm sure you have too. I-55 is about 4.5 hours between Chicago and St. Louis, unless you hit traffic up in Chicago. So they're driving for most of the night before Candy falls asleep, or not falls asleep, but gets stuck with his two coat sleeves. I can't talk. Gets caught and can't drive, and they drive through the 2 semis. And then they turn around and they stop at the hotel. And then after the hotel and after the car finally gets pulled over by the cop, they say we still have 3 hours to go, which is literally in Springfield. Springfield is about 3 hours exactly to Chicago. So that was an 1.5-hour drive that took them way too long.
Yeah.
Okay, I can answer part of that. I can't answer because I do own the Blu-ray, and so I watched the special features on this.
Yeah.
And Michael McKean is on here. And Michael McKean is in the film. He gets third billing, and he's in the movie for 90 seconds. But he talks, and this speaks to go back for a second. the original script of Planes, Trains, and Automobiles was twice the normal length. It was 180 pages. They shot 3 hours of footage. They cut it down from 3 hours to 2 hours, and then finally 2 hours to an hour and a half. And what gets revealed in that scene with Michael McKean is that they have driven out of they've gone in the wrong direction.
That would explain a lot. Because they were heading back to St. Louis for a while.
Right, and I think almost he doesn't say this explicitly, but because they get like this dairy truck, I just assumed that they overshot Chicago and ended up in Wisconsin.
Oh God, that's a lot.
And that's how. Right, so that's but they just kind of omit that to cut to the chase. By that point in the film, how the evening part I can't account for. So I'm going to assume there's maybe some other things on the cutting room floor that explain why that drive takes so long. But at least part of it is, they're supposed to have overshot Chicago.
They were going to get New Glarus. I mean, that happened.
Who wouldn't?
Right.
I don't like this theory just because then they don't get near Springfield, and I like to think Springfield is a hick area with a really bad hotel.
Well, I've stayed at some hotels in Springfield. You're not.
Hey, the Red Roof Inn. Still only about $35 a night. And, it could have been the Bel Air, which is now rubble. Or actually, it's a nice little green space in the middle of nowhere. So the other thing with that scene that I really do enjoy is it has one of three different things that John Hughes uses when we're looking at Neil's memory and Neil's thought process. The first one is when they are at LaGuardia and he's looking at Del trying to figure out where he's seen him before. And they could have easily just shown another flashback scene of back to where he's on the New York streets and he's in the cab. But instead, they brought that cab door into the airport and filmed a really brief, like split-second scene where Del's back into his hat and his coat, and it's showing what Neil is seeing in his mind vision. We see the same thing as Gregory mentioned when they turn into skeletons and he looks over and he sees Del as the devil in a really bad Halloween costume. They're showing you what Neil is seeing in his head, and that's the kind of thing that's how your thought process would work. You're not going to just revisit the entire scene in your head again. You're going to see contextual images, and I love that. And it really builds up to the end when Neil is on the L and leaving Del, and he starts thinking like a normal person would. He doesn't care about Del. Del is in the rearview mirror. It's done. He's thinking about his kids. He's thinking about his wife. He's thinking about being back with his wife, and then he realizes that he was really intimate with Del, which brings Del back into the memory, which brings the fun times that he had with Del into his memory. And it's how a thought process would work. And I haven't seen many films at all, especially a comedy, be able to do that. And I love the way that Hughes shot those three scenes and how it just arrives to that conclusion. Most of the time they just would say, okay, he was feeling bad and he went back to go get Del. But no, he actually followed the process anyone would have followed.
He's a genius, and I mean, like obviously people peg him as the Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller, the Brat Pack, but I don't think that he gets the credit truly that he deserves. I mean, everyone knows of John Hughes, I get that, but even just as a writer, I mean, he's got so many classics under his belt, and I couldn't believe it, but I didn't know that Home Alone was written by him till like last year. And it's just to me, it's one of those that just completely has, whether it be your teenage years or your early 20s or your 30s, like, I mean, he really has filmed life in such a way that it's conveyed. It's a comedy, but it has those dramatic tones that come through, and it's super heartwarming at the end, and not in like a Full House, like the music playing, everybody hugging way, but more in like a real life. You can find certain bits of tragedy and comedy, and vice versa. He's just great at that.
Yeah. So I'm gonna
No.
cheat. Oh, go ahead, Lou.
No, just 100%. You're really right on that, because I think if you could, as you grow older, from whatever age you are, you could start with the John Hughes movie that relates to you. Like, you could watch Home Alone as a kid, and it's kind of that escapism. Oh, this would be cool if I had the house to myself. You get to the teenage years, and you have the Ferris Bueller and Breakfast Club, and the, anywhere from escapism to angsty teen movie. And then you get to an adult, and yeah, you've got a movie like this, which is a lot about traveling and the desire, the pain in the ass that traveling can be, but the family aspect. And then things like Vacation and Christmas Vacation, which are all about, wanting to make things perfect for your family. And yeah, throughout there's kind of, you could really grow up with him, literally. A lot of people did, but anybody could at this point with this filmography. But all of those movies have that thread of characters that are real people. Which a lot of comedies lack, and this one in particular, just on some of the stuff he just hit on too. The earnestness is earned, and I wrote down the line that Steve Martin says right before they depart on the subway, where he goes, "But I think I'm a little wiser too." In the hands of almost any other director and actor, that would come off as some of the hokiest dialogue, like you would say, like a Full House, but no disrespect to Full House, but
I love Fuller House,
but we'll talk offline.
Please.
But in the hands of those guys, it's earned, and it's earnest, and it's so well done that it doesn't come off as cheap or hokey.
Yeah, I mean, sorry, Scott, not to cut you off, but
no,
it's just interesting because the bits of dialogues that he puts in, and it's also, you mentioned escapism as a child. This is almost escapism as an adult, because it starts in the sequence where you're waiting for your boss to be able to approve something, and then he keeps going back at it and looks at it for what they say 2 hours, just to say, let's reconvene after the holidays. And so it's like that whole concept of that work-life balance, like well before that was a thing to talk about, and how you need to make sure that you're giving enough to your family, because it's obvious, and Dell sees it right away, that he's neglecting his wife and neglecting his family in order to come back and have his work there. So it's just interesting. He really captures human life in a way that many directors attempt to. And I know that he's one of the most well-known directors. I just still don't think he's given the credit he deserves as far as his dramatic sequences within these comedies or coming-of-age stories. And I'm a coming-of-age guy, so maybe I'm just a hook, line, and sinker for this, but he really conveys it very well in his writing and in his directing.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And speaking of directorial decision, I want to talk about the scene I mentioned already, and it amazes me that this scene's actually in the film. And if you've watched on cable, you haven't seen this scene. When Neil has parted ways with Dell for probably the second or third time, and he's trying to rent the car, and he gets out to the acres, and he's 3 miles out from the rental joint, and the car is gone. So he returns to the rental place and runs into the secretary from Ferris Bueller. And it is literally 60 seconds of him just saying the F word over and over and over again, 18 times to be exact. And here's the thing. Nowhere else in this film is the F word, and I say F word because I'm trying to keep us without an explicit for this one. I'm trying. Nowhere else in the film is the F word ever stated. And the end of the 18 Fs come to the punchline where she looks at him and goes, "Well, you're just effed." And I freaking love that scene, the way she plays it, the way he plays it. We've all been there. We've all been to a place where we just want to kill the person behind the counter, or like in Craig and my position, we're usually the person behind the counter back in the day who wanted to get killed. But here,
I'll tell you what, though, those Best Buy employees, they don't make them like they used to, because those kids are stupid now.
They were pretty. Let's be honest. They were pretty stupid when we worked there too.
That's true.
Let's be honest. I can name some names. Micro. I'm just gonna leave it at that. Dude snorted energy drink out of a pixie stick. Yep. Okay, so, but let's talk about the decision making here. Okay, PG-13 just was created in 1984. Okay, for Gremlins and for Indiana Jones and Temple of Doom. So we're 3 years after that. Most movies still are either R or PG. There's not many PG-13s. Anything else in this film, even like the naked pictures in the taxi cab earlier on, this film would have been PG. But John Hughes and whoever decided with him and the studio allowed it, said, for this one joke with this one punchline, we're going to let you go for an R. And that decision impacted the movie quite a bit. Planes, Trains, and Automobiles came out November 27th of 1987, the Thanksgiving weekend. The same time, Three Men and a Baby came out. Both roughly hour-and-a-half films. Say what you will about either one. I think both are good films, but obviously I think Planes, Trains, and Automobiles is a much better film. But Three Men and a Baby was PG, very family-oriented, directed by Leonard Nimoy. It made $167 million at the box office, and it was the #1 movie of the year. Planes, Trains, Automobiles came out the exact same time. It only made $50 million. So they made a decision. I don't know if it would have been able to compete, but they made a decision that could have literally cost them $100 million for that 60-second joke. And I am so very happy that they did.
Yeah, well, and interestingly enough, that scene is one of the 2 scenes that got Steve Martin to do the movie. And I'm guessing that's part of the reason it stays in, is because you can get Steve Martin for your movie, and he says, I want this scene in. You know, Hughes obviously has plenty of pull at this point in his career, but so does Steve Martin. So you've got, there's no way they're cutting that. But yeah, you're right. It's so funny to think that if you just excise that scene from the film, I won't say it's a family-friendly movie, but it's certainly not,
I'm a terrible parent. Movie. My kids already seen it. I'm a terrible parent.
Hey, my parents took me to see it in the theater. I'm not throwing stones here.
Yeah, but I know your dad. So that makes sense to me.
Yeah. Oh yeah, no, this movie was.
I know your mom, and that makes sense to me.
Well, see, I think, I got to talk to them about. They probably don't ever even remember that we did this, but I just would love to have heard the conversation between my 2 parents over the decision to take all of us to that movie. But I digress. But you're right. I think what to me, the other reason that I'm glad that it did is I don't think this movie. I think this is a movie for adults, because I think while there's a lot of silliness, and certainly I liked it as a kid, but the themes in it and what it's about, the movie gets more relatable the older you get. And that scene where he does explode is so earned, because any of us, anybody who's ever been screwed over by an airline, who's had flight delays, flight cancellations, who's been on a bus, who's had bad car, all of those things are just so relatable that even though Neil is venting on this woman who doesn't really deserve it, we're like, yeah, no, who wouldn't have just loved to have that moment of exploding F-bombs? But it comes right back in the face to it, too. It's like, you screwed yourself, bro. Sorry, man.
Just the way she plays it, it's the perfect customer servant. She's just like, well, do you have your copy of your room agreement? No. Well, you're effed. The other thing, too, with this movie is, when you have 2 big names in comedy, Steve Martin and John Candy, it takes a lot for both of them to allow the other one to allow themselves not to be in a scene. There are a couple times where it's just John Candy or it's just Steve Martin. This is one of those where Dell is off the board at this point. He's been gone for a bit, and he's not going to come back for a bit. And the fact that Candy allowed that to happen when he's top billed along with Martin, and the fact that Martin allowed Candy to have some scenes this very same way. That shows that both of them were tied into this pretty well. And you don't see that much anymore.
Yeah, I agree. Also, something I wanted to mention, I've been watching, first of all, I love my Apple TV. And it's so easy to turn on subtitles. that a lot of times I'll be listening or watching something and Liam will be in the room, or like we'll have to turn it down or whatever. So the subtitles are generally on. What I find interesting, and I have to credit the West Wing Weekly podcast for telling me about this, is that in a subtitle, you'll notice that sometimes the words on the subtitle change, that they're different from the words that are being spoken. Well, that's because that's the script that's actually being put in. This movie, it diverts from the subtitles or the actual script more than it's on. And I mean, in a really interesting way. So I recommend that if you watch this again, watch it with the subtitles, because they are taking his words and they're making it better. Like just the interactions that they have, I think, are better than the original script. And that's all Steve Martin and John Candy. So, like I said, go back and watch this with the subtitles on next time, and you'll kind of notice throughout the entire film, the actual dialogue diverges from that quite a bit.
Interesting. Yeah, you assume there's some improv, but I bet you there's quite a bit. You're definitely.
I mean, it's in the ballpark. It's not like they're changing ideas or like that, but
but when you're
they're
flowing
adding
riffing.
jams and.
I would hate to do that with a Judd Apatow movie.
Oh my god. Yeah, for sure. But I never knew that about subtitles. And again, that was they talked about it on West Wing Weekly really early on. That that's why if a subtitle is different, it's because they're basically they're basically putting the script into the movie. And so if someone says a wrong line or whatever the case may be, or improvs a little bit, that's why it would divert from the original text.
Well, now that you've plugged the hell out of West Wing Weekly at least 3 times, I expect Josh Molina to be on our show now.
I'll tweet at him. He's very, very active on the Twitter.
Get him on the tweets.
Well, maybe we can have him for American President. He was in that.
Everyone was an American president. It was West Wing, the movie. So, are there any other scenes that we want to hit on before we move on in the discussion?
Yeah, the opening scene, the chase scene between Steve Martin and Kevin Bacon
for no apparent reason.
For no apparent reason. Well, because John Hughes was shooting this around the same time as he was shooting She's Having a Baby,
which actually shows up in the movie as well.
Right, it's the clip that Neil's wife is the movie that Neil's wife is watching at home, and John Candy has a cameo in She's Having a Baby, so Kevin Bacon has a cameo in this. They swap cameos. Well, one of the things I love about it is that, you talked earlier about Steve Martin being more restrained than what we're used to, but him running in that's just like, it's just the look on his face is still always just like classic,
that's King Tut right there.
Steve Martin. Right, exactly. And that's one of the things that the touches is that, silly Steve Martin doesn't go away in this movie. He just picks his moments more. And every time he picks it, it makes sense. Because like the freak out that he has about him stealing the wallet, you stole it, he stole it. And like just that, all of those areas, or the look on his face after he's been picked up by his testicles. All of those things just remind me about, there's still a lot of the Steve Martin that people knew from SNL or his stand-up routine in this movie, but it's given a context that makes it still a real character.
And then he starts talking like this way. He's on it. I can't do it. So, Craig, you got anything else you want to add for scenes?
No, I think we've covered a lot of them. I really like the ending quite a bit, because it does turn the movie on its head a little bit. It's foreshadowed if you're watching for it. I've only seen this once. Now going back, I think I would notice it more that his wife's dead. But you see little glimpses of it in the hotel and all that. And he's also kind of a vagabond because he knows everybody. he's like, oh yeah, I know that guy. I sold him shower curtains. Oh, this guy, shower curtain rings, and like he seems to know a lot of people, meaning that he's just been like wandering around the Midwest.
And he can't pay for his hotel room ever, so he's got to find ways to make that payment to get the airline or get the hotel. So that's why you have the scene where he's selling shower curtains to people as earrings because he's just got to make some cash. That's not the first time he's done that. Another foreshadowing, if you notice on his big ass trunk, all of it are hotel stickers. That's it. So you can just kind of tell just by looking at his trunk that he's just bouncing from hotel to hotel.
Yeah, that's something I definitely missed, having only seen this movie once. But I do like the ending. The only critique. Well, are we going to get into maybe what we don't like?
Yeah, we will. We'll do that next.
Okay.
Before we do that, one thing I do want to say, and I may actually be negating or going against your critique right now. Most of the times when you have these buddy up comedy road trip movies, they don't have the blow up until the last third of the film. And that's when they have to get back together and do all that. For this, they blow up right away. That hotel scene is only 20, 30 minutes into the film. And at that point, Neil hates Del. And he just can't stand him. And for the rest of the movie, it's just, a hanger on. So I like the fact that they don't do the whole shtick where they're friends and then they have to get back together at the end. And it definitely turns that on its head. So let's go ahead and talk about a few things that we maybe don't like or didn't care for in there. So, Craig, you had something? Go ahead.
His wife's reaction when he comes in at the very end is just a little too much for me. And then
She's
like
elitist.
they embrace and the kiss is awkward to me because it's like everybody's just watching them kiss. Like that to me, again, I really enjoy the sweetness and the sincerity in the scene leading up to that, especially on the train platform, the L platform and everything. But I just don't, her delivery on that scene was just not right for me. And really Steve Martin's delivery on that scene too. Because they needed to practice that kiss or do something to make it look not so stagey, moving. I don't know.
You just unlocked something with that point, Craig, and it's something I've thought about. The final shot of the film is not of Neil and his wife, but it's actually a close-up of Del, and it always struck me as a little odd that it's him kind of smiling while watching Neil and his wife share a kiss. And I think maybe you just kind of unlocked maybe why that is, because Candy, I think, sells it better than Steve Martin or the actress who plays his wife, whose name escapes me at the moment, that he feels the warmth maybe more than they do. And that and the fact that John Candy just has that, beloved grin and smile, that it's hard to hate any movie that just has John Candy beaming at you as its final frame.
Well, and I like that close up. I mean, it's very cliche and cheesy having ending with a close up freeze frame on the guy, but that is Del coming home to a family for the first time in 8 years. Mm-hmm. So it doesn't matter if it's a bad kiss or if the kid's running around trying to strangle the other kid. He's having Thanksgiving dinner for the first time in probably 8 years. Mm-hmm. And that's the look you see on John Candy's face. I agree with you that the Steve Martin wife thing is kind of goofy, but I love that look on John Candy when they close the film. Yeah,
and I'm okay with that. I just didn't like, I don't know, it's just something about, and maybe it's just a me thing, but something about, in general, just like making out in front of your kids. And like every movie does it, but like, you don't do that. You know what I mean? Like, that's not a thing you do. Like, it's just weird to me, is all.
Craig's having a little bit of marriage counseling on the podcast right now. Tell us more, Craig.
No, that would be my major gripe with the film. Other than that, I mean, it's only 90 minutes long. It's hard to have many gripes. And when you've got two comedic legends and a legendary director and writer, what are you going to do?
Lou, how about you?
It's hard for me because everything about this movie works for me. So there's nothing that I don't like. And I knew you were going to talk about this. So when I watched it the other day, I had to think, okay, is there something that isn't working for me? And I guess if there's one thing that works less than anything else, it is the train sequence, because I do think the pace of the film slows a little bit at that moment. There's no like real big jokes or laugh breaks or anything. It's just, hey, we show up, we're gonna break up, and he's gonna be on the train. You know, the walk to the bus station and that kind of thing. That's the only moment where I feel the momentum of the film dips. But even that, I mean, that's such a small quibble, because it's like 2 minutes of screen time, I think, total. But like in a 90-minute movie, it's the only moment where I tune out just a little bit.
Yeah, I got nothing. I'm usually the curmudgeon and the jerk who complains about everything, but Jeremy would be proud. I have nothing to complain about with this film. I love that it is a series of vignettes that kind of tie together. I think John Candy and Steve Martin are at the top of their game, and the things you guys point out, sure, but you're right, Lou. I mean the train is in the film for maybe 2 minutes, and when the train breaks down and they start walking to Jefferson City, aside from this is where Neil's starting to, his heart starts growing like the Grinch a little bit. This is the first time we see that, but that's about it. So it does drag just a bit, but they're immediately going into, again, one of a really good scene with the bus and the speed up film of the kid running up and down the aisle, which I've been on charter buses. I want to kill people when I'm on charter buses, so I understand. Is there anything that you guys want to bring up or talk about that we haven't talked about? Characters, quotes, anything like that?
Yeah, I mean, I think, I don't know if I've expressed well enough in that hotel sequence, just as a whole, the depth of character development that's being shown. Because I think what could happen in the hands of a lesser group is Neil Page as a character could come off to be such an arrogant jerk. And there's two things that happen. One is he's in a relatable situation, which is, I think, anybody who's, like I said earlier, anybody who's ever been in his situation could feel his frustration. But after he goes off and rants and John Candy has his comeback, two things happen, one with Candy, one with Martin. The first is right when Candy says, "But I don't like to hurt people's feelings." And the look that Steve Martin has of I went too far. He's still like a human. And then after Del just eviscerates him on the comeback, he goes to lay back down. And then there's a shot of Del looking back at Neil to see if it landed. And then he turns right back around again, which is just like both of these characters still care about what the other person thinks of them, even though they're locked in. And I love any comedy that just has fully formed human beings in it. I love goofy comedies too, but I love the depth that those two actors bring to these roles that I think make the movie worth going back and watching over and over again.
Craig, do you have anything you want to add?
The one thing I'd mention is I miss this kind of comedy in today's cinema. I call me a prude, but Bad Moms Christmas just came out, and I'm sure that it's just tons of dick and fart jokes all throughout. I'm sure that somebody gets naked and whips around their thing or whatever. But I like this type of comedy. I will say maybe the one that comes the closest out of the modern ones, and one of my favorites, is I Love You, Man. But I do like their interaction throughout this film, and I like to believe that maybe John Hughes created the first shared universe, and that Neil's family lives right next to the McAllisters, and they interact with Cameron's dad around the corner. And so it's cool that we get to own the John Hughes shared universe here in Illinois, and I like that.
Yeah, and It's not the same house, believe it or not. It is a different house, but it definitely looks.
Yeah, I can tell it's different.
Similar.
I mean, but it's right next door.
It doesn't have the attached garage.
Right.
Yeah, no, there's so many little things in this movie that you just catch after watching a couple times. When the son of the hotel guy shows up and he's chewing his chew and everything else, if you watch it, he spits the chew in his hand before he shakes Steve Martin's hand. I mean, it's the little stuff that you won't catch unless the hands on the wall in the hotel that everyone's gonna go back and look for now. There's so much stuff that this film has, and it could have been easily slapstick, and that's it. But they put a lot of, Lou, as you said, they put a lot of heart into it. And if you want to see how this movie is redone so many times badly, it's a little older now. It's 7 years ago. My God! But Due Date with Robert Downey Jr. and Zach Galifianakis is just basically a remake of this, and it is freaking terrible. Much for what Craig has said. A lot of dick and fart jokes, a lot of stupidity. And so they don't do these kind of comedies anymore.
Have you ever seen I Love You, Man?
I have not.
You should watch it. Jason Segel and Paul Rudd. And to me, like, they definitely do still have some of the gross humor, but nowhere near like a Seth Rogen film would now. And go back and watch that. It's worth watching that film because I think that's what, I don't even know who directed it, but that's what they were going for, is this type of a film. And I really enjoy it. It's one of my favorite comedies. So check it out, and maybe we'll talk about it on a podcast. I don't know if it's a flashback, but we won't have another one of these for at least 6 months. So we're fine.
Hey, no.
By then it'll be a flashback because it'll have been so long.
You're right.
To keep balance in the universe, we must talk about the good Jumanji film before the crappy Jumanji film comes out.
All right.
We must talk Robin Williams, and we're going to, I swear. So
I've already talked about him twice.
Well, yeah, because you keep stealing my movies, so bite me.
Well, you take July to November off, and that's what happens.
Right there, boss. Right there. How many shows have I put out compared to how many shows you put out?
Quality over quantity. I interviewed an Academy Award winner.
You did that last week. What about the other weeks?
I prepared to interview an Academy Award winner.
Okay, let's finish this up by giving our scale on this. We'll do a 1 out of 10. And Craig, what would you give this? And again, Craig has only seen this film one time.
I would give it, usually you give me more opportunities to come up with my own rating system. I would give it 7 Amtrak cars out of 8.
I hate you. Okay, Lou, what do you got?
It's a perfect 10 for me. I can't. You should see this movie. If you haven't seen this movie, you need to see this movie. It's as we've mentioned earlier. It's lean. It's 90 minutes. There's not a wasted moment in it. It moves very fast. It's so funny. It's so well acted. It has tons of heart. It's one of my in my top 10 of comedies of all time. It may even be top 10 films of all time. I watch it every Thanksgiving. I could go on. I could go on for hours about this movie, but I'll just say, just go see it and have a good time.
It is only 90 minutes, but to quote the film itself, she's short and skinny, but she's strong. And the first baby came out, she didn't even scream. Came out sideways. in Dylan Baker's first role, by the way. His screen debut is that role. I don't know who that is, but okay. I also give this thing a 10. It's a perfect film for me. I have no complaints. Even the little things that you guys nitpicked, I don't even see those because this movie is just perfect. I don't know where it is in my pantheon of films, but if I have like a top 25, it's there. If I have a top 10, maybe. It is definitely something that if you have not seen, I agree, you need to see it. We didn't spoil much for you because you really can't just break this thing down. You have to watch these two geniuses of comedy, one of which was taken from us way too soon at their peak, both of them. So yeah, let's go ahead. Craig, can you give us a few plugs before we get going?
Sure. The best way to find us is just to go to www.FlashbackPodcast.com. thefrontrowmoviereviews.com. If one day we ever buy the domain TFRMR, I will give Jeremy a big kiss on the lips. But go find us on the frontrowmoviereviews.com. That has all our social media links. I just want to give a big shout out to the whole network. I think we're potentially doing some retooling here in the future, and just the content is incredible that's being brought out. I mean, Lou just put out Best of the Best, and Scott is really trying to make Discovery a good show. And
we're talking Orville next week.
Oh my God.
This is dropping the 22nd, so we talked Orville last week.
And it was so good. It was such a good discussion. But, and of course, I've mentioned it about a billion times, but we got to cover the Lincoln Film Festival earlier this month and interview the likes of H.G. Wells's great-grandson and an Academy Award-winning director and a director of a Goofy movie. I mean, it was just phenomenal. So we've got all the other shows that were brought to you. Thor Ragnarok dropped earlier this month. I'm going to try to do a full disclosure on Coco as soon as I'm able to see it, which could be 2019. I'm not sure. But just keep with the feed and keep watching. And thank you for your love and your support. And make sure you have a friend subscribe to our feed in the near future.
And if you're listening to us on your podcast, make sure you do give us a review on iTunes or Podbean or Stitcher or wherever you're listening.
It's crazy how much those things help. You know what I mean? Like, people say that all the time, and they're like, "Oh, give us a review. It really helps." But like, as far as the algorithms are concerned, and getting more notice on iTunes in particular, those ratings are gold. So please leave us a review. If you've listened to even one episode, then do us a favor and leave us a review.
And, I'm actually looking at our iTunes right now, and we are on episode 288. So there's a lot of stuff to listen to. A lot of it's bad. Some of it's good. So check it out.
We're coming up on there's somewhere in the archive of human history, there will be 1,000 hours of us just talking BS.
Oh, since whenever Jeremy's on, we have at least a 5-hour podcast. So I think we're probably already there.
It's great because he won't listen to this.
No, he won't. He's going to edit it, but he's not going to listen to it. So bite me, Jeremy. The other thing I would say, too, is if you're watching this on YouTube, if I actually get this up on YouTube, please make sure to subscribe there as well, too. And hit that little notification bell below your subscribe button, because we do a lot of live shows. And if you want to join in on the conversation, you can get that notification as soon as we go live, and you can check us out there as well too. Aside from that, that's it for this time. I'm happy that you guys worked with me to bring Flashbacks back. I think this was a great movie to jump back in with, and as I mentioned, we're definitely going to be talking some more films here for the end of the year, and then I've got a plan, and I'm going to stick with the plan. I'm holding it up to the camera right now. I'm going to stick with the plan for 2018. Hopefully by February I will still be on the plan, but we'll see. So until next time, I have been Scott McFarland, and with me has been
Lou Hare
McFarland.
One of these days we'll get that
every
right.
Every time. I introduced myself first at the beginning, so I kind of thought I'd just go with it.
Yeah, and so you're the one who failed.
I don't know that I'm the one that failed.
Yeah.
I'm with Scott on that one.
I should have just said I'm Lou Hare. I'm Lou Hare.
And I'm Craig McFarland.
Cute. Craig, you've gotten better looking. I don't understand what's going on.
And I can actually grow a beard now.
I laugh at you. So until next time, you may be able to catch us on the LaSalle and Van Buren L station, because I'm in Chicago way too much. But if not, you can always find us in the front row. Have a good one.
Bye.